Power project. Without further ado, let's address this situation of flip-flopping, the war on carbs. And then I go to Mark Bell's page and I am just infuriated because this guy used to eat fat and protein and now he's eating carbs and protein. He used to talk about low carbs, war on carbs. He used to talk about zero carbs even sometimes. And now he's like starting out the day with the hash browns and egg whites and a little bit of mozzarella cheese along with some steak. And then he's like pouring honey on a bunch of stuff. He's doing the sugar diet, sugar fasting. He's doing, intermittent fasting, just doing so many different things. And first off, I want to kind of talk about like why people get mad about some of this. I don't think that there's situations or scenarios where I am trying to mislead anybody. I'm not lying to anybody about the style of diet I do. I'm not lying to anybody about that I actually just have interest in a lot of these different diets and that I utilize a lot of different diet strategies, not only within a month or within a week, but also within the day and also even within the time of day and the timing of my nutrients. I'm into all of it. More recently, I got into having some intra-workout carbohydrates. And I have almost like a post-workout shake, like during the workout that provides me with some carbohydrate. I like to experiment. I like to just try different things. As many people know, I used to do a carnivore style diet, but I think that people thought that I did a carnivore diet for like ever. And I didn't really do a carnivore diet forever. I did it for a chunk of time. Every year that Sean Baker would run the, Carnivore Month, World Carnivore Month, I would participate, and I did so for 3 or 4 years, including 1 year where I just extended that 30 days by an extra 70 days. And I did 100 days of the carnivore diet. And I want to say maybe there's exception of protein shakes or something like that. I did straight carnivore, meat only, meat, bone broth, eggs, salt for like 30 or 40 days. And then the rest of that time, I do remember, adding in like some protein powder and stuff like that, just to kind of like get myself through it. But if you've been paying attention, you've been listening, I switched from a carnivore diet to a diet where there was a little bit more carbohydrate in there, where there was some rice in there. I'm sorry, not rice, but where there's some fruit in there. And then I got into occasionally there would be like a little bit of fruit, a little bit of rice, and it kind of coincided with some other stuff I was doing at the time, which was running. Also, over the last several years, I started to lower the amount of fat that I consume, even while on a low carb diet. And what I want to point out in this episode, which I've shared before, is that just because you're on a low fat diet doesn't mean that your diet needs to be high carb. It could still be like moderate. It could be like moderate to high. Those commercials, moderate to severe. Like, what the hell does that mean? Moderate to severe rheumatoid arthritis. You're like, what the? Doesn't make any sense. Moderate to severe. You're like, that sounds to be pretty different from each other. Moderate versus severe, right? But anyway, your carbohydrates don't need to be through the roof just because you're not consuming fat or because your fat is low. The same thing can be said with carbohydrates. Just because your carbohydrates are low doesn't give you a carte blanche to eat as much fat as you possibly can. It's not like a contest of you just consuming as much fat as as you can consume. You don't need to do that. And you'll be better off by not doing that. You'll be better off by just having like an amount that's good, an amount that feels good, feels comfortable. And that amount is going to vary from person to person. It's going to vary for activity levels and so on. But I don't really think you can make an argument for that many people to have, somewhere around, say, like 300 grams of fat in a day. I think like that's pretty excessive. I do know one person, though, that has around 300 grams of fat a day. And that is our buddy Dominic D'Agostino. And Dominic's in great shape, small waist, wide shoulders, strong as an ox. Deadlifted 585, I think, for like 10 reps or something like that after like a 10-day fast or something. And he's as keto as they get. He's on that side of the fence. He will eat carbohydrates though. So he'll have chocolate and stuff like that here and there. He'll have a little bit of carbohydrate. But if I was to kind of, you know, I guess if I was to figure out how much carbs he has in a day, it's probably under 100. You know, it might be 100 might be on a high carbohydrate day for him. And you know, maybe the low end is like 40 or 30 or even 0 sometimes, I'm sure. And then we have, you know, Robert Sikes, who's, you know, way on that keto side too, Mr. Keto Brick himself. And keto bricks are pretty awesome. They're made with cacao butter and they're made with stearic acid. Well, they're not made with stearic acid. Sorry about that. They are made with cacao butter, and cacao butter has a large amount of stearic acid. Stearic acid as a fat goes to the liver, similarly to fructose going to your liver when you're eating fruit. So it's a little bit different of a fat than normal fat calories. Now, it doesn't mean it doesn't cost you anything in terms of calories. It just means it's different on the metabolism. That might be something you want to research a little bit more and learn more about. So it's almost a little bit more like an MCT, medium chain triglyceride. Those are a little bit faster acting fats. Anyway, let's just back everything way up. I just, you know, was talking about those guys because they're on the extreme levels. And those are some of the guys that I know that consume quite a bit of fat. But again, what I'm saying here is, so those guys, it's also important to note, those guys are not low carb. They're not just low carb. Those guys are full keto. And keto means that your fats are very, very high. And in my opinion, your fats need to match at least 1 gram. And people might argue with this, 1 gram of protein per every gram of fat, or 1 gram of fat per every gram of protein, either way. 1 to 1, like an egg. An egg is like 5, 6, 7 grams of fat, 5, 6, 7 grams of protein, depending on the size of the egg. And so I'm just bringing those guys up because they're on that side of things. They're on the keto side. And there's a whole slew of people that follow them that do something a little similar. But those guys are great examples of guys that have communicated to me, have told me that they do not use performance-enhancing drugs, and that has no relevance to really much of anything other than the fact that if you're following along with some of this stuff and you're trying to figure out like what works best, these are not guys that are using performance-enhancing drugs and then never talking about it, okay? These are guys that have said, I know for sure that Robert Sikes in particular, he has tested bodybuilding shows. As far as Dominic goes, I don't know, but he's tremendously strong. He's in tremendous shape, and you take the information whatever way you want. The communication about anabolic steroids, I think, is important because, like for myself, I share with people that I do performance-enhancing drugs. It's important to know that so that people don't think that they can just automatically be built like me via just following maybe the diet suggestions that I have. Now, however, I don't have a physique that I think is that crazy where it's completely unobtainable for someone to do naturally. Hence my co-host, Nsima, who I personally think is built better than me. And he's a lot heavier than me. Holds probably a good 20 more pounds of muscle in me. And there's other people that I've seen where they have these great physiques. And I believe that some of them are natural. So, even though I do utilize stuff, there's natural bodybuilders, there's plenty of them that are able to have a better physique than me. Having said that, I'm also somebody that really didn't train for physique stuff until the last 4 or 5 years. So Nsima started out doing that. Also has some awesome genetics and some awesome. It's also important to note that he's a professional bodybuilder, and he's somebody that attacked that. And it's like a skill set that he has on top of a bunch of other circumstances that led him to be as jacked as he is. All right, let's back everything up a little bit and let's talk more about this flip-flopping. And again, if you say I'm a flip-flopper or whatever, I'm not really offended. The way I look at it, though, is it's an evolution. And within that evolution, a bunch of people came with me, Nsima being one of them. Nsima used to count calories. Nsima used to be a fan of flexible dieting. I got him on a low-carb train, and he really hasn't looked back since. Other than trying a little bit of sugar fasting, which, I thought he just kind of felt was like a little bit whatever. Like, I don't think it really moved the needle for him tremendously. We haven't talked about that in a while, so it can kind of check back in with him and see where he stands on that. The sugar fasting thing, really swept everybody, off their feet, and was a fun time period. But just like anything else, like, we're trying to find what's optimal. And we're trying to figure out, what's going to be best and what's going to be something that's going to be like manageable. Sustainable is an interesting thing, because I think if something has good enough results, that it will be sustainable. But we can talk about that more in a little bit. So let's back way up. Okay. I'm a kid. I'm training for a powerlifting meet. I'm trying to weigh 181. Or 198, whatever the weight was at the time. Don't really remember. Probably 15 years old, 14 years old. Maybe a little. I can't remember some of these details. Maybe I was even trying to make the 220 class, because I know at 16 I was like around 240. I was a pretty big kid, because I started lifting at 12 and I started to gain some size as it became like 15, 16, somewhere in that range. Anyway, I guess the weight is irrelevant. I was trying to make weight for powerlifting meet. And as I was trying to make weight, I was eating like all this cereal and stuff. And my brother was like, yo, he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm trying to make weight. I was like, I'm just going to eat like really low fat for the week. And I'm going to, kind of see what happens. And he's like, no, man. He's like, you need to go the almost complete opposite. So my brother told me, mainly only eat meat, and mainly just don't eat any carbs. And if you really feel like you need to have some carbs, eat some fruit. And so I was like, okay. And he got that from his mentor. He got that from a guy named Rod Fedko. And Rod was a really smart lifter, very strong, benched 556 in competition, or 551, whatever that kilo number is. And I think he did it raw. I think he did it without a bench shirt. I mentioned this before. Interestingly enough, Ron Fedko also won an Academy Award for his contribution to special effects, because he was a math professor at UCLA, where he was a PhD in applied mathematics and physics or something along those lines. Anyway, very smart guy, figured out a lot of really cool stuff with lifting. Didn't even really like lifting. He just liked trying to figure out stuff with lifting. And so I remember he also bench pressed 225 for like 56 reps or 64 reps or something wild. And he'd go, dap, 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 dap. He'd make all these crazy noises when he'd do it. But he was a savage guy, and he had a lot of great information. So he told my brother, hey, don't eat any carbs. He told my brother, you're fat. Don't eat any carbs. Like, you're a good powerlifter. You're strong, but you're fat. And so my brother started losing weight by following some of that regimen. Yeah. And here's some video of Ron hammering some squats. I think, it looks like he's in like a single ply squat suit and some knee wraps. Very strong guy. I think he competed at like 198 and 220. So yeah, he was this was a guy that O'Hearn trained with. So whatever competition this is, especially, it's in California probably. Whatever competition that was, that I'm sure Michael Hearn was probably competing in that competition probably as well. Because they trained together. And my brother trained with them. Eventually I came to California and trained with them a little bit too, not nearly as much as my brother did. Yeah, there's shit, he's benching crazy weight. Just raw, just very, very, very strong. Anyway, so I started following some of the principles of a low carb diet at a very young age, had success with it, made weight for the competition, did really well for the competition, carved up, and just kind of ate normal for the powerlifting meet, and gained some of the weight back and so forth. And as I finished the powerlifting meet, and I just wanted to be in better shape. I just remember I wanted to be like leaner. I was like, that felt good kind of doing that diet. I just want to, lose some body fat. And so my brother told me more about like, okay, eat some carbs on the weekend. You can have like a cheat day. You can have some fruit here and there. And yeah, just eat meat, avocados, olives. I remember olives and avocados being like a thing. Like it was like, try to eat some of these, like maybe not like a ton of them every day, but just like try to eat these like weekly. And I remember enjoying that and really liking that. Peanut butter, almond butter, stuff like that was in for me to eat because I was also playing football at the time and burning a lot of calories. So I would go through like a jar of like natural peanut butter like every other day. I remember just downing that stuff. So that was kind of fun and still staying relatively lean. So the grams of fat were pretty high. It was kind of a keto-ish, type thing. Anyway, fast forwarding from there, as I got into like my 20s and stuff like that, still very low carb, still trying to figure things out, still trying to work on like getting leaner and stuff. I never really did much bodybuilding stuff. I didn't really know that much about like a bulk. To me, it just seemed like a bulk was just going to get me fat. So I didn't really ever do it. Plus I was already big. Plus I was already pretty strong. So I was like, I don't really know the point of it. I didn't really understand that, a bulk, if I bulked a handful of times as a kid, it would have been really, really useful for me. But yeah, I never went through any of those phases. As I got to be around 25 years old is when I started to utilize performance enhancing drugs. It was after I had my first son, Jake, and then we moved. We lived in Columbus, Ohio. That's where we had Jake, and then we moved to Northern California in 2004 or 5, and super training 06. Super training started in about 2006. I think it might have even started in like 05, kind of more unofficially, but it started in 2006. The first gym that super training was at was a gym called Body Construction Zone in Woodland, California. And that's where we met as a team to hit up our lifting. At the time, I was a coach over at Pioneer High School as well, defensive line coach, along with being the strength coach over there. And we just dominated. We completely dominated, destroyed everybody, undefeated season, just smashed everybody. It was a lot of fun to be part of that. And maybe at some point, maybe I'll go back to some coaching, because I like football a lot. And coaching was very like fulfilling. And then seeing those kids just be way too powerful for the other team to like deal with was just amazing. It was a lot of fun. And some of that is shown in this film, Bigger, Stronger, Faster. You see me working with the kids at Pioneer High School and all that stuff. So at that time, I'm not really on much of a diet. The diet has gone rogue at this point because I discontinued professional wrestling. So while I was professional wrestling, I was still trying to get lean and shreddy poo and all that stuff. Once I switched over into doing the sport that always chased me around since the time I was a kid, powerlifting, that is when I decided to like ease up on all the dieting stuff. And I was like, you know what, let me just go for it. And let me gain some weight and sort of see what happens here. So it started out, the diet would be pretty clean. It was primarily protein. And then, in talking to some like other lifters and stuff, they were like, yeah, man, you got to just get after it. You need a little bit of dirty food here and there. And so I would have, burrito. I'd have a sandwich. I remember going to Beach Hut Deli and getting the surf bird or the surfing bird or something like that. and a couple other sandwiches they had there. And I'd get like a foot long. And I was like, I got to finish this. And this would be before the gym. And it was just like this massive sandwich. And I remember going there with Jesse Burdick and making fun of him because he only ate half of his. But one of the sandwiches there, I can't remember which one it was, but it had bacon and cream cheese, had bacon and cream cheese on it. Bacon, cream cheese, maybe like ham, maybe turkey. And then I would get it with like mayo and mustard. And like, it just had just so many different things going on. And it was just this like calorie bomb. So I'd eat that before the workout. Probably ate some chips too. I don't really remember. I still was always a fan of like just getting a diet soda, which I still even do today. And I still was doing even while I was on the sugar diet. And we can talk more about that some other time. But, so I would eat fairly normal. Like I'd eat like a normal, like lifter slash bodybuilder slash power lifter that wants to like put on some weight. I'd have like rice and meat and, mainly a lot of times even just meat, like just, or even like an omelet. I could have like an omelet in the morning and it really wouldn't be carby because later on in the day I'd have, the carbs from the bread or from the tortilla if I eat a burrito. And then at night was like a little bit more gluttonous. At night is where I would still eat like a normal dinner a lot of times. But I would also then start to smash like Ben and Jerry's and some candy and all that kind of stuff. And if you're just joining in, we're live and I'm going to answer some questions in a little bit, but I'm going over the evolution of my diet. Trying to give you guys perspective on what some people think is flip-floppiness of me hopping from one cool diet to the other cool diet and me trying to like sell people on stuff, and which doesn't make any sense. Cause I'm slanging some protein powder over here and then I'm telling you guys not to eat protein on the sugar fasting diet. Right. So it's not a good business plan, right. To do some of these things. It's just an experiment. That's all it is. And that's all it was. It's just an experiment. It's things for me to try, then see how they work, and then either keep them around or don't. There's some things that I've utilized in dieting that I'm going to keep around forever. One of them being intermittent fasting. The other one being sugar fasting. I still sugar fast a couple times a week. And sometimes it's just for 6 or 8 hours in the morning. Other times it might be for, I think like 2 days ago, I did like 18 hours. Like it just kind of depends. I don't think it's going to be something that I'm going to do for 24, 36, 48 hours like I was experimenting with before. In fact, I know like over the next couple of weeks and months, I probably won't do that. I just don't need it. It doesn't seem like anything I need to mess with at this point because I was utilizing it for weight loss and I don't really have, at the moment, if I was just to eat one less meal, I would lose weight fast because I'm eating like 5 or 6 times a day. I'm eating a lot of food. My metabolism feels cranked and I feel like a furnace. So if I wanted to lose weight, I'd probably just chop out a meal, maybe do a little bit more intermittent fasting, or maybe even just do like a light sugar fast through the morning. I don't know, have a piece of fruit or two, and then, don't eat anything till later in the day. But again, I'm not going to do a 24-hour, 48-hour, 72-hour sugar fast. Not that I think it's pointless. Just because I'm not doing it doesn't mean I think it's shit. It just means I've moved on. It's a part of an evolution, part of me working on getting better. And it's part of me kind of sticking these feathers in my cap and then kind of continually moving forward. So at 25, I start, pushing, like getting bigger. And I go from around 240, probably like 27, 28 years old, start getting to around 250, 260. Body weight starts to climb, start to get bigger, start to get stronger. I'm out here in California training at Diablo Barbell, training with Jesse Burdick. I don't know how you'd find some of those videos, but they exist. Doing some squats with Jesse Burdick at Diablo Barbell and getting into the 242 class and 272 weight class as a power lifter and really starting to push the amounts of food to new heights. But yeah, at this point in my life, all I'm trying to do is get stronger, and all I'm trying to do is get bigger. And I'm noticing a relationship between myself getting bigger and myself getting, stronger. And so I just keep getting bigger. I go from 240 or 242 rather to 275 to 308 and then into the super heavyweight class. Powerlifting and power lifters are so fat that they have a 308-pound weight class, and then they have super heavyweight, which is kind of funny. That was a 771-pound deadlift that didn't go anywhere. At least I got it off the ground. But yeah, I was just trying to get big, and I was doing it with a lot of protein. Um, there were performance enhancing drugs involved, obviously. I remember taking, people will ask, so I remember, taking um, just the basics. I'll just leave it there. I'm not even going to go into like exactly what I took. I don't think there's any reason to sidetrack things a little too much, but I took the basics. I took the stuff that you think people would take to get big, along with some orals and stuff like that for a few weeks running into the contest itself. But yeah, a lot of protein. And then it was like Ben and Jerry's, peanut butter cups, Snickers bars. Post workout, we'd be like, hey, let's go get a burrito or let's go get tacos. Um, I did, however, as I started to get really big, I started to get like heartburn and I started to run into like sleep issues. And then I was like, uh-oh. So once some of that started to happen, that's when I got into the health side of things. I'm like, you know what? You're going to have to eat better. And so I tried to clean up my diet then, but I was not successful because I was already addicted to these highly processed foods, which by the way, highly processed foods, like there's just no arguing. Like it's a horrible thing. And I know I know that we can put certain things in the highly processed food category, like protein powder and so forth, but that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about like the Ben and Jerry's, and we're talking about the potato chips and Doritos and candy bars and all that kind of stuff as being highly processed. And again, I'm not saying that you can't get in shape or that you can't be lean with highly processed foods. I'm just saying they're problematic in more ways than one. And even though, talking about the sugar diet and telling people like, yeah, I'm having some candy, keep in mind, I try to share with people that I was only eating a little bit of candy. And candy, candy's probably, it has dyes, it has, this and that, right? But everyone's eating that anyway. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, you're not always on your diet. You're not always strict on your diet. Like, just face the facts. You're not always strict on your diet. You're eating junk here and there. And these same people that are making a big deal about candy or drinking alcohol, look, no, none of us are perfect. We're not here for that. We're not here to like nitpick all this stuff. If I make a suggestion and you don't like it, then just don't eat it. It's not a big deal. Like, you don't have to make a big fuss over it. Oh my God, I don't think you could do it on candy. Okay, well then don't have it. That's fine. The sugar diet and the sugar side of things, it's just kind of showing you that you can do things slightly different than what everybody really thinks. That's the basics of it. And I found that to be true for myself with nutrition. I mean, even when I started with low carb, I thought low carb was crazy. I was like, wait a second, I'm an athlete, I'm a football player. I think we need carbs. And then some people are like, well, and need carbs is like we don't necessarily need a lot of carbs. And I believe that for the highest performance, I do believe that we need carbs. And I would just say my evidence is every athlete. Just pick your favorite athletes. They all eat some carbohydrates, right? To get to their platform, to get to their thing that they kick ass at. Okay, so carbohydrates are important. And my diet back then, it wasn't anything strict. I'd eat McDonald's. I'd have Carl's Jr. I would eat Sonic. These weren't necessarily foods I was like hammering every single day, but I do remember they were on like harder training days, after harder training days. Very rarely would I eat something like that before. I just always hated like having my stomach be like too full. I always hated like burping and all that stuff. So even with the even with the Beach Hut deli sandwiches that I was, showing you guys, I stopped doing that after a bit because I was like, man, it's way too much food. And I did like to eat kind of a lot, especially before the bench workouts, because it just made me heavy and made me like bloated, which is kind of funny as like an quote unquote athlete to think that like you need to get like you get bloated for your training session. Really kind of funny because like what other sport would you be doing that in? Only in powerlifting would you be doing something like that. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what happened with the diet. And then I fell with 1,085. And once I fell with that weight, it was like, well, that was pretty dangerous. What's next? Like I could have died, squatting that weight and having that fall and falling the way I did. I'm lucky that, like my knee and my ankle happened. And it really, in the grand scheme of things, just wasn't that big of a deal. Um, and you can see here, this is me being pretty heavy. And I want to say though, maybe for this competition, I think I was like 308 because I remember I gained some weight going into the competition. I was actually thinking of going 275. Jesus. I was actually thinking of going 275, and I remember being like 290. And then one of my buddies, yeah, I was like 290, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I can make the 275." It was like 285, 290. And one of my buddies is like, "Nah, dude, eat up." And that's exactly what happened to me is I ate up, and then my squat suit was extra tight, and, I lost sensation in my legs. That's why I felt like that because, like, normally, I would have better control, and I'd just be able to force my knees out and sit into that pocket, and I used to kinda drop into the squat, um, and I would do, like, this little tiny rebound thing, and then I would pop back up out of there, but I wasn't able to do that with that squat because my legs were numb, and, when I stepped up to the platform, my legs were totally numb, and, I remember being like, I shouldn't do this." I just had it in my head, I'm like, "You shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this." And then I was like, fuck it. Let's go for it." And I went for it, and that's kinda what happened. So I sort of had some decent intuition beforehand, but I didn't stop myself. I should have just said, "Hey, you know, I need to call it. My legs are numb because they completely fell asleep." And so I'm like waddling up to the platform with my legs super numb. Yeah, just a weird situation, but it's a great situation because it led me to all these other things. It led me to discover a lot more stuff about diet, and it also helped me to understand people that are heavier. Helped me understand people that are obese. It helped me understand my own mother because I got addicted to those foods. So I thought I was like, okay, now it's time to turn it around. From the time I was basically 12 until I was 25, I learned to eat protein and do all these things, and I know how to do a lot of that, and I don't have any problem with it. And I've been lean before, so I'm like, I'm gonna get in good shape. But it actually was really hard. It took me weeks and months just to get momentum to lose some weight. I almost had to get even just like a little bit healthy first before I started losing weight. And at the time, I didn't focus on a lot of like real diet stuff. Um, what I kind of said to myself was like, let's not eat a lot of carbs and let's go on some walks. And I was still lifting, obviously. And so that's where it started. And I was like, you know what? Like, you like coffee, you like this, you like that. Keep all that stuff in there. You like sweets. So like, let's figure out a way to get some sweets in there. So that's when I was thinking about like protein bars or dark chocolate or like something. I was like, I still want to have that stuff in there, and I'm active enough to where I should be able to have some stuff without, holding on to all this weight. I should still be able to lose weight. And that's when on most nights, I would end most nights with a perfect bar, with a dark chocolate bar. I would get like 70%, 80%, 90% dark chocolate, and I would get a perfect bar, and I'd basically eat the peanut butter bar with the chocolate, and I'd like time it up. I just like chew the chocolate or chew the peanut butter, get a little peanut butter mashed up in my mouth, and then I'd stick a little chunk of chocolate in there. Sometimes I'd eat the whole bar of the, I would eat the entire perfect bar every time. But sometimes with the dark chocolate bar, I'd sometimes just eat half of it, especially because I'd always buy like kind of nice ones and they were expensive. And so sometimes I'd only eat half of it. Then the next day I'd do the same thing. And it was a way to make that perfect bar, which they're delicious, by the way, but it was a way to make that perfect bar more palatable because they are kind of dry. And it's peanut butter, I love peanut butter, but geez, like peanut butter is like, it's a lot on like your tongue, right? So when you have it with the chocolate, just a perfect mix. I'm a huge peanut butter cup fan. So it's not me eating a sleeve of peanut butter cups and it's not me eating Oreos and Ben and Jerry's and stuff. Now this is my snack now. This is my late evening snack was that. And that was delicious. And is it still not great for you because it's mixed macros? Right. Yeah, it's still not great. I mean, the perfect bar has a ton of sugar in it. It's like a honey bar and it has a ton of fat in it. So it's just not good for you. Even with dark chocolate, I mean, even if we're trying to make up reasons on why this is healthy, it's still really not a great option for most people trying to manage their body weight. But I was coming off of eating so crappy that this worked really well. And so it was like pretty much no carbs except for that meal. Okay. Except for when I was going to eat that. There was no bread, there's no pasta, there's no rice. It was meat sauce. It was meat. It was like meat, sausage, bacon, cheese, avocado. Vegetables were still in the mix. Fruit, I ditched fruit for a long time. And this was kind of the start of the war on carbs. And I started getting down, started to lose some weight, started to weigh, because like I forgot to mention, normally without trying to overeat, I was between 285 and 295. But with extra effort, that's how I got up over and right around 330 pounds. And then, losing that first 30 pounds, that's why I thought it was going to be so easy, was because when I was 290, it was like, it was easy for me to be 290, but being 330 was actually a little bit of work. I had to like kind of eat extra. And as you saw in that video there, that was me like losing some weight, but then I just regained a little bit going into that meet to try to lift a little bit more weight, and it didn't work out. But anyway, as I was coming down in weight, the weight started coming off a little faster due to walking and due to just like tuning up the diet over time. And throughout most of it, so I forgot to mention, even when I was a kid, so I started a low carb diet when I was about 16, but also I think before that time or somewhere around that time, actually it was okay. I remember it was after high school. I started to mess around with Barry Sears' Zone Diet, which later became popular with the CrossFit community. And I forgot to mention also that the beginning of my weight loss journey started with the Paleo diet from Rob Wolf. So I've been on a lot of different diets. I did the Zone Diet for a while, which is like a balanced diet. I did Rob Wolf's diet, which was his first book was Paleo. I can't remember the name of it. Paleo something or other. And
Paleo Solution?
Paleo Solution. Some people may remember John Kiefer. So John Kiefer and I, we met. He lived in California, and he was like, "Hey, I do this, really low carb diet. I do something called Carb Nite." He told me about carb backloading too, but I was like, backloading, like. And then he was like, "You eat whatever carbs you want at night." I was like, "I don't need that. I just, I got myself to weigh 330 by doing that." And he's like, all right, well, I got this other diet you might want to try. And it's called Carb Night. I was like, that's kind of what I do anyway. So he and I became friends. And then he was like, he was pretty savvy. So he attached his book to a lot of my old videos. I don't know if it's still there, how it works or what, but he might still make money off it. But I'm sure he made quite a bit of money off of me promoting that book, because I was promoting that for years and years. But it was, probably similar. I never even read the book. I just know that it was a very low carb book, and Carb Night kind of referred to um, it referred to the fact that you were going to have carbs. I think like just one night of the week, or maybe two nights of the week, or something like that, rather than the other thing that he had, which is backloading, which I never thought was useful. It still doesn't make any sense to me. It was based off of like one study, and like I don't know. I've heard people talk, like people used to ask me about it all the time, and I was like, I don't do carb backloading. I do Carb Night, But anyway, just to clear that up, that was just like basically a low carb diet that I did for many, many, many years. And I'm trying to think if there was any other diet interventions that came in along the way. No, there really wasn't, So from 2000, so the invention of the slingshot is, super training gym came along in 2006. Invention of the slingshot's 2010. I think by around 2014 or so is when I, kind of went on a mission to like start to get really lean. That's kind of like where jacked and tan sort of started, getting jacked and tan. And then I started getting in like really good shape. Still, basically on a keto style diet until I did the BSN photo shoot. When I did the BSN photo shoot, BSN was a supplement company at the time. They had a product called NO Explode. They actually were one of the first companies to have like a pre-workout drink. Um, Pre-workout. There's the old Super Training Gym, which was then turned or was also Midtown Strength Conditioning. And yeah, you can see here, like I'm in really good shape there. I think I'm still pretty heavy. Well, probably here, actually, maybe, I don't know, maybe more like 250. So not, I mean, 20 to 25 pounds heavier than I am right now. Um, but when I did the BSN photo shoot, I remember weighing about 245. Um, and we did, I think, Ryan, you might be able to look it up. I did 550 bench that I did for two, uh, maybe 5. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you know what? I think it was 550 maybe for one. Or maybe, oh, wait, I'm sorry. It was 500 for three. It was 500 for three, weighing 245. And it was the day before the BSN photo shoot. And the only reason why I think that has any like merit, the only reason why I'm not like, telling you this just to like brag and show you these old videos. But maybe I am. Yeah, it's a 5. Oh, this is probably it. Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah, 5 hundo. So this is the strongest I've been, weighing, that weight that I am at right there, which is like around 245, 250. But, double body weight bench press done for triple, and you can see I'm like kind of bloated in the face, but you can see that I'm also like pretty jacked. Shoulders are capped, and I'm on probably a lot of gear. Um, that for that shoot, I got in shape for that shoot by eating carbs. It was a low fat. There's a silent mic. Um, I was eating a low fat diet, and not necessarily like real high carb, but it was a low fat diet with some carbs. I'd have like rice and potatoes, chicken breast, white fish. There was no red meat on that diet. There was like a couple cheats along the way. It was like an 8-week, 12-week thing that I got from a guy named Ed Koo. Ed was very much into bodybuilding, and he knew a lot of stuff, and so he gave me like a diet, and it was just it was a very low fat, moderate carbohydrate style diet, all the normal bodybuilding stuff that you think of, eating 5-6 times a day, using the Walden Farms sauces. I remember utilizing a lot of mustard. I think one of my go-to foods was, which actually just caused a craving just thinking about it, but it was just chicken and rice and mustard. And it was like, I know it sounds weird, but sometimes when you get into doing some of this bodybuilding stuff, you just start to actually enjoy that stuff. And I don't remember if it was like regular mustard or if it was like a honey mustard, but I think I might have used the Walden Farms mustard, which is kind of disgusting because I always say about Walden Farms, I'm like, I don't know what the F kind of farm they have because their stuff's disgusting and it doesn't have anything in it and nobody understands how they make it. Walden Farms has, it's just like chemicals. But they do have a pretty good like maple syrup, like pancake syrup thing that has, their stuff has no calories somehow. It like doesn't make any sense. They have like buffalo wing sauce, and like buffalo wing sauce needs like butter in it, like butter and Red Hot. That's buffalo wing sauce. But they make one and it's just like water. And then when you go to use it, you're like, this is weird. And almost all of them are gross. But the company's been around forever and bodybuilders know about it. It's actually just like, I don't know, super fascinating. Disgusting, pretty disgusting products, but I remember they have like at least 2 or 3 of their sauces that are not so gross. So yeah, so then I utilized this this low fat diet. Didn't really lose a lot of weight, but just got a lot leaner and was able to kind of like hold muscle and was able to look pretty freaky for some of those BSN pictures where the weights are stacked behind me and all that kind of stuff. And then from there, it's just been like what you guys have seen more recently of me utilizing Stan Efferding's vertical diet. You guys have seen me, going more keto, going more this, more that. And from like, 250, 260, 270-ish, which I think in that video, like I said, I think it was 245, 250. But soon after that, I think I went back up 260 or so. And anyway, we just started losing weight by doing my own version of a ketogenic diet, which I call the War on Carbs, which isn't really a ketogenic diet. It's just like a low carb diet. And over time, fast forward maybe 5 years into that, I started to recognize like, oh, you're eating a little bit too much fat and stuff. You need to cut back on some of this. There's no reason to eat that much fat. And so I did that. My goals changed, after I fell at that 1,085. So then I was no longer tethered to some of those same strength training outcomes. So like, if you don't care about your strength, then it's just so much easier to like lose the weight. So you're like, I'm not even trying to be big. And I'm not trying to do something that a big guy does. I'm not trying to like lift heavy. Like I want to just move better. I want to look different and I want to be leaner and I want to be able to do like walking lunges easier and like pull-ups, and shit like that, shit that a skinny person can get good at. So trying to think if there's anything. Yeah, the vertical diet then, kind of came in a little bit here and there. Talked with Stan a bunch. He was like, yeah, you really don't need the carbs, but he's like, it's good to add some in, just so you have a little bit here and there, maybe just put it around your workouts. And that's kind of about where I'm at now. I mean, it's not really a vertical diet that I'm doing now. I guess you would say it's a little bit vertical-ish. Like a lot of the foods that are in the vertical diet are in my diet now. But I eat a lot less fat than what Stan normally recommends for someone starting the vertical diet. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else in there. There's nothing else in there other than the sugar diet. So here we go. So let's just talk about this briefly, and then I'll start to take your questions. The sugar diet is a diet where you consume fruit juice, maple syrup, honey, sugar, and even sometimes candy. You're not really downing sugar all the time. You're not just eating candy, okay? You're mainly having fruit and fruit juice. the idea of the sugar fast came about because sugar fasting triggers something, which this is just like a belief that some people have had, along with a hunch, along with there is some research on this in rodents, and there's some research on this in humans, I believe. People started getting all excited about this, like FGF21, and that it speeds up your metabolism, does all these things. Well, I think that consuming carbohydrates in general helps to quote unquote speed up the metabolism a little bit anyway. And so that in combination with eating the carbohydrates, it was the recipe, because the recipe also kind of says that in order to boost FGF21, if that even is the goal, then it actually has to do with protein restriction. And you can also do it through eating a lot of fat, mainly eating fat and just not eating protein. And some people said, hey, if it's about protein restriction, can we eat fat and carbs? I don't think we have any data on that quite yet, but you might be able to. I don't really know. Anyway, it sounded interesting to me. It sounded like fun. I'm like, you know what? I shake some things up. Let me try it out. So I learned it from Cole Robinson, and then it went viral, I think, via me. Cole gave me the information. He's the one that taught it to me. And then Cole put out a lot of videos, and then you saw a lot of other people making videos off of that. And then the sugar fasting was a nice shot in the arm for this YouTube channel. So that was kind of cool. And then it just kind of opened my eyes up to like, man, I got to talk about nutrition more, because you can talk about it endlessly. People need to hear about it more, and they need to learn more about it. But that's the basis of sugar fasting, are those foods that I just listed off. And when you are doing a sugar fast, you will consume those foods and those foods only, and you just do it for however long. Could be 24 hours, could be 48, could be a week, whatever. I learned by doing it for a week that it didn't have favorable outcomes for me. I didn't really like it. I know that Joe English has written some stuff where, you could have like, you can have particular amino acids with like collagen, and it just seemed like it was like too much. You could have it with leucine, and like, I was just like, you know what? I don't want to do anything that's like super complicated. I'm just kind of doing this for fun. I don't care about like jumping through a lot of hoops to like make the diet work, so to speak. So I was like, yeah, I think I'm good with just doing the sugar fasting for shorter, so don't end up running into any of the negative side effects. And I think that's what you want from almost all diets, even a ketogenic diet. I've talked about this many times before. I think bumping up and rubbing elbows with ketosis, I think, is the way. I think that's pretty helpful and pretty useful. But I think to like perpetually be in ketosis all the time, I don't think is a great idea for most people. Again, there's Dominic D'Agostino, and there's Robert Sikes, who hasn't had a carb in a decade. So there's some people that have figured out a completely different way, and it works great for them. But for me, I think I'd rather have some rice and potatoes and stuff like that in the mix here and there with my diet. Nowadays, I weigh between 215 and 220. Interestingly enough, through eating a lot more, I'm only a couple pounds heavier than I was even like a few weeks and months back. The sugar diet did help me to lose some weight, but it wasn't anything super substantial in terms of like, well, I guess I take that back a little bit. I think I did lose about 8 to 10 pounds total. And I think that I am like 8 to 10 pounds, like just leaner looking, period, in my face, in my stomach. I think I think the sugar diet was responsible for some of that. And that was my point, when Joe Rogan's like, you've always been in shape like that. Yes, that's true. I have been in good shape. But the sugar diet, when I implemented that, it was the only other change that I had. PEDs are always in, right? The sugar diet itself was the only change I had. And I got a little bit leaner at that time. Could I have gotten leaner just doing any other protocol? Yeah, probably. What about just doing some cardio? Yeah, I probably could have. But the fact remains that for me, when I did it, and did the sugar diet, back and forth, maybe every other day. I did a sugar fast or something along those lines, or just did the sugar diet where you're consuming you're doing the sugar fast during the day, meat and starch by night. It seemed like it worked great for me, and it would still work great for me. I'm just choosing to only do it a couple times a week at this point. And now I'm on a bodybuilding style diet. I have upped the fats a little bit more recently. I just personally think that fat has a lot more utility than what Cole Robinson shares. I think that satiation and satisfaction are both really important. And I disagree. I don't know why Cole keeps saying that fat doesn't have any, he kind of says it has no density to it. And I don't understand. It has the most density to it. So it's like, unless he's looking at it from some other way that I'm unaware of, I think he's saying I think he feels like it just has worthless energy in it. And that's fine for him to say that. But for him to say it doesn't have any density to it, it's the most calorically dense that there is. I mean, part of the problem with eating a thing of Ben & Jerry's is how calorically dense it is. And why is it so calorically dense? Well, a large percentage of the calories that come from Ben & Jerry's, probably the biggest percentage of calories is from the fat amount that's in there. And so, yeah, that idea, and that's kind of like he'll preach against the carnivore diet, and he'll say, don't do the carnivore diet. And part of the reason why someone might not lose weight on the carnivore diet is because of the caloric density, how rich a ribeye could be in calories. So yeah, I get kind of lost on that. Maybe he feels like there's no other good nutrients in fats. I don't even really know. I do know the body, makes a lot of cool hormones based off of fat. I'm not disagreeing with him that you can have low amounts of fat and not run into any hormonal issues for a long time because we have a lot of body fat on us. I agree with him on some of that. I also think, though, it's not worth it. Just as I said earlier about, and I'll have Cole on again so that we can talk. I don't like talking about people when they're not there, so I'll have him on again and we'll do another interview with him and say, what are you talking about? Fat is the most dense. And try to get a better understanding of what the hell it is he's talking about. Anyway, if you guys got questions, I might have answers, but this is the evolution, of me